Every year, Halloween turns America into a circus of costumes, candy, and chaos. But beneath the fake blood and plastic fangs lurks something even stranger. It's the one night that exposes just how weird, petty, and unhinged people can really get when the pumpkins come out. 1. A woman in Ohio dialed the police non-emergency line to report a suspicious candy operation. Her complaint? 3 neighbors were colluding to hand out identical mini Kit Kats, creating what she called a monoculture in the treat economy. She demanded that the city restore competition so her kids could diversify their sugar portfolio, warning that Halloween had become a cartel of cocoa. 2. A homeowners association in a pristine Texas suburb fined a family $100 for a grave offense against community standards. Their crime? Displaying a single, smiling inflatable ghost in their yard on October 28th. According to the HOA's sacred texts, Halloween decorations were only permitted for a strict 48-hour window starting on October 30th. Apparently, the spirit of Halloween is only allowed to manifest on a very specific, pre-approved schedule. 3. A man in Florida lodged a complaint with his city council about his neighbor's 4. A customer at a national party supply chain demanded a full refund for a fog machine. The reason? It produced too much fog. He complained to the store manager that the device, which he had set up in his living room, worked so effectively that he couldn't see his television. He accused the company of failing to warn him that a machine designed to create thick, spooky fog would, in fact, create thick, spooky fog. 5. A tourist visiting Salem, Massachusetts in October filed an official complaint with the local tourism bureau. His problem wasn't with the crowds or the prices, but with the costumes. He was deeply disappointed by the overwhelming number of people dressed as witches. He argued that it was uncreative and historically repetitive, and suggested the city should encourage more costume diversity, completely missing the entire point of visiting Salem for Halloween. 6. A school in California received a furious letter from a parent after their annual trunk-or-treat event. The parent was outraged that her child, who was allergic to peanuts, received a fun-sized Snickers bar. The school had designated allergy-free cars with teal pumpkins, but the parent insisted every single car should have been prepared for every conceivable allergy. She demanded the school apologize for exposing her child to the mere existence of a candy bar he couldn't eat. 7. An apartment tenant in Chicago filed a noise complaint against his upstairs neighbor. The disturbance wasn't loud music or a party, but the incessant and spooky rattling of a decorative skeleton the neighbor had hung on their balcony door. The complainant claimed the gentle clinking of plastic bones in the autumn wind was a form of psychological harassment and was preventing him from enjoying his favorite crime dramas in peace. 8. A man tried to sue a haunted house attraction for false advertising. His legal argument was that the haunted house wasn't actually haunted. He told the court he had brought an EMF meter and other ghost hunting equipment and found zero evidence of genuine paranormal activity. He felt he was promised a real supernatural experience and instead only got actors in masks and cheap jump scares, and he wanted his $25 back for the emotional distress of not meeting a real ghost. 9. A woman called 911 to report a violent home invasion in progress at her neighbor's house. She described seeing a man with an axe repeatedly trying to break down the front door. When police arrived with sirens blaring, they found a motion-activated animatronic decoration of a zombie lumberjack that would swing its plastic axe whenever a car drove by. The neighbor had forgotten to turn it off after their party. 10. A customer complained to a farm stand that their organic, free-range pumpkins lacked nutrition labels. She insisted each gourd should have a calorie count and QR code verifying its birth farm, arguing that carving without full transparency was reckless produce behavior. When the cashier laughed, she threatened to report them to the FDA for pumpkin data concealment. 11. Some people call the police for burglars or emergencies. A man in New Jersey called them on a teenager dressed as Michael Myers. The complaint wasn't that the kid was threatening anyone. It was that he was just standing silently at the end of a driveway. The caller claimed this method acting was loitering with creepy intent and was creating an atmosphere of unnecessary suspense on the block, demanding an officer make him walk around or look more cheerful. 12. You'd think a 10-foot-tall inflatable dragon in your yard would be a clear sign of Halloween spirit. But for one homeowners association in Arizona, it was a major violation. A neighbor filed a formal complaint that the dragon's inflatable wings, when fully extended, encroached exactly 3 inches into the aerial space above their property line. The HOA agreement was silent on aerial trespassing by mythical creatures, but they fined the owner anyway for the airborne invasion. 13. What's scarier than a ghoul? According to one office worker, it's a bowl of candy corn. He filed a complaint with Human Resources against a coworker for creating a hostile work environment by placing a bowl of the controversial candy on the shared snack table. He argued that the mere sight of it was visually offensive and that the ensuing debates over whether it was delicious or disgusting were severely hurting the department's productivity. 14. Most people worry about getting their house egged on Halloween. One man in Pennsylvania worried about getting shamed by his dentist. He lodged a complaint with his town council that the dentist living down the street was handing out toothbrushes and mini tubes of toothpaste instead of candy. He called it passive-aggressive public health proselytizing and claimed it was ruining the pure, hedonistic joy of the holiday for the neighborhood children. 15. A middle school principal had to send a district-wide email clarifying the school's Halloween costume policy. The reason? A parent complained that the no full face masks rule was discriminatory against her son, who wanted to dress as a sentient Amazon delivery box. She argued that since the box covered his entire head and torso, it wasn't technically a mask, and the school was stifling his inanimate object-based artistic expression. 16. A man filed a chargeback on his credit card for a fog juice refill, claiming the vapor failed to respect property lines. He said the spooky mist trespassed onto his neighbor's azaleas and caused unconsented atmospheric contact. He even attached a diagram of wind direction, demanding reimbursement for emotional damages caused by drifting fog. 17. Apparently, the sound of silence can be deafeningly offensive. A woman in Washington complained to her HOA about her neighbor's elaborate graveyard display. Her issue wasn't noise, but the lack of it. She stated in her written complaint that the dozens of silent stoic tombstones were a morbid and depressing daily reminder of mortality every time she left her house. She requested they add a more upbeat musical element to the display. 18. Getting lost is the entire point of a corn maze. That simple fact was completely lost on a family in Illinois who filed a complaint with the farm's management. They claimed the maze was negligently designed to be too confusing, causing them an hour of emotional distress and family friction. They seriously suggested the farm should provide GPS tracking and a smartphone app with the solution for guests who prefer a more goal-oriented maze experience. 19. A guest at a historic, supposedly haunted hotel in Georgia complained at the front desk that the resident ghost was underwhelming. She claimed to have heard a faint, apologetic-sounding whisper and saw a door gently close on its own. She felt this timid paranormal activity was not worth the hotel's premium haunted room rate and demanded a partial refund because the ghost wasn't scary enough to give her a proper story to tell her friends. 20. The devil is in the details, or in this case, the numbers. A Nevada HOA cited a homeowner for their Halloween light display. The violation wasn't the brightness or the color scheme. It was the exact number of bulbs. The community's strict holiday lighting code specified a maximum of 665 individual lights. His fiery, devil-themed display used precisely 66. He was fined for excessive and potentially demonic numerology. 21. A restaurant's spooky spiderweb pizza special backfired in the most American way possible. A customer called the health department to report a contaminated pizza. The contamination was a carefully piped design of a spider web made from black olive puree, with a whole olive for the spider's body. The man was convinced a real, massive spider had disintegrated on his food, leaving behind what he described as its horrifying remains. 22. Forget complaining about decorations. This guy complained about the holiday's core concept. A man in Idaho wrote a 2-page letter to his local newspaper arguing that the tradition of trick-or-treating should be banned. His reasoning was that it 23. A woman called animal control on her neighbor's 20-foot lawn skeleton, reporting it as an unlicensed prehistoric species. When told it was plastic, she pivoted to zoning law, insisting that bone-based structures over 6 feet required a permit and proof of ethical sourcing. The operator simply replied, "Ma'am, that's not how skeletons or laws work." 24. Most neighbors argue about fences or loud music. One suburban feud, however, started over the direction a fake spider was facing. A man filed a complaint with his HOA because his neighbor's giant hairy tarantula decoration on the side of their house was positioned with its head pointed directly at his bedroom window. He claimed this constituted a persistent 8-legged stare, and that the inanimate object was violating his personal space with its implied arachnid voyeurism. 25. A father submitted a formal complaint to his city council after neighbors used contactless tongs to drop candy into his child's bag. He called it cold, sterile, and anti-community, arguing that trick-or-treating required human warmth and direct hand-to-bag exchange. He proposed a bylaw banning utensil-based candy distribution to preserve the spirit of communal sugar. 26. What happens when a Halloween decoration does its job a little too well? A mail carrier in South Carolina found out when he filed a formal complaint with the postmaster. A homeowner had placed a realistic-looking severed hand prop sticking out of their mailbox as if it were reaching for the mail. The mailman refused to deliver their mail for the entire week of Halloween, claiming the prop gave him a micro heart attack every day and created an unsafe and hostile work environment. 27. At a pet-friendly Halloween parade in Vermont, one woman wasn't upset by a barking dog or an animal behaving badly. She filed a formal grievance against a golden retriever. Its crime? The dog's owner had simply draped a white sheet with eye holes over it, dressing it as a ghost. The complainant argued that this costume was insultingly low effort and diminished the artistic integrity of the entire parade, demanding the dog be disqualified from the cutest costume category. 28. Only in a tech-obsessed world could this complaint possibly exist. A man in California filed a nuisance complaint against his neighbor over a new Halloween light projector. The projector displayed animated ghosts flying across the front of the house. The man claimed that these spectral projections were interfering with his Wi-Fi signal, and he even included a screenshot of his slow streaming service as evidence. He accused the phantom apparitions of hogging all the bandwidth. 29. A high school drama teacher in Texas, known for his theatrical flair, created a hyper-realistic crime scene on his front lawn for Halloween, complete with chalk outlines and fake blood. A neighbor called the police not because she thought a crime had occurred, but to complain that the display was an exact replica of a scene from a popular TV crime drama. She was furious that his decorations had created a massive spoiler she couldn't avoid seeing. 30. A man threatened to take his neighbor to small claims court because their motion-activated crow decoration cawed every time he walked by, defaming his character as a trespasser. He demanded the bird be reprogrammed to greet him by name, "Good evening, Steve," to avoid further reputational damage. He later accused the crow of emotional slander. 31. Some people are scared of ghosts or monsters. One woman in a Florida retirement community was terrified of thematic inconsistency. She filed a lengthy handwritten complaint with the community board about her neighbor's lawn decorations. The yard featured a mix of classic vampires, werewolves, and a 7-foot-tall inflatable alien. She blasted the display as chaotic and narratively incoherent, demanding that her neighbor pick a single monster genre and stick to it for the sake of neighborhood cohesion. 32. The classic "Beware of Dog" sign is one thing, but a "Beware of Zombie Goldfish" sign prompted an official warning from a condo association in Maryland. A resident placed the small, humorous sign on his apartment door. The association ordered him to remove it, stating that the sign was nonsensical and could confuse potential buyers about the types of pets permitted within the building, as they had no official policy regarding the ownership of undead aquatic life. 33. Putting up a "No trick-or-treaters" sign is a clear message. But filing a police report for trespassing against a 6-year-old dressed as Elsa is a whole new level of "get off my lawn." A homeowner in Wisconsin actually did this, claiming a child who couldn't read had willfully ignored his sign and rung the doorbell. He told the responding officer that the single chime had caused him severe emotional anguish and interrupted his quiet evening. 34. In a stunning display of historical misunderstanding, a tourist lodged a complaint at a colonial-themed Halloween event in Virginia. He was upset that the historical reenactors, dressed in 18th-century attire, were handing out old-fashioned rock candy and homemade molasses cookies. He argued that this was inauthentic to the modern Halloween experience, and that they should be giving out brand-name, factory-sealed chocolates to truly capture the holiday spirit. 35. A city's public works department in Pennsylvania had to spend an entire afternoon fielding calls from a single, irate driver. His complaint? A decorative witch on a broomstick had been placed near a traffic light. He claimed the witch's pointy hat looked too much like a directional arrow, creating a dangerous and confusing situation. He was genuinely concerned that drivers would mistakenly believe the hat was an official traffic signal, instructing them to make a sharp upward turn. 36. The corporate Halloween potluck is a minefield of questionable culinary choices, but one dish sparked an official HR investigation. An employee filed a formal complaint against a coworker who brought a kitty litter cake, a dessert made of crumbled cake, pudding, and Tootsie Rolls designed to look exactly like a used cat litter box. Despite knowing it was a cake, the complainant insisted it was visually and psychologically unappetizing and created a hostile and unsanitary eating environment. 37. You can get a noise complaint for loud music any day of the year, but it takes a special kind of person to file one against a Halloween classic. A resident in a quiet Florida community formally complained about a neighbor playing Monster Mash on a loop. His complaint wasn't about the volume, which was reasonable, but the mind-numbing repetition. He argued that hearing the song for the 4th time in an hour was a form of auditory torture and was causing him more mental anguish than any actual monster could. 38. A parent demanded the school ban wordplay costumes after a kid came dressed as a serial killer, with tiny cereal boxes pinned to their shirt. She claimed the pun was psychologically manipulative and blurred the line between humor and snack violence. In her follow-up email, she called it trauma wrapped in cornflakes and demanded a zero-tolerance policy for puns. 39. Sometimes innovation is met with resistance, even when that innovation is a genius way to deliver candy. A man in Ohio built a long PVC pipe candy chute from his second-story window to the sidewalk. A neighbor complained to the city not about safety, but that the candy was arriving with excessive velocity. He claimed the high-speed delivery was bruising the delicate chocolate, and that his kids' treats were being damaged by the sheer force of the candy slide. 40. There are certain expectations when you pay to be terrified. For one customer, the most terrifying thing was a zombie who couldn't keep a straight face. He demanded a full refund from a haunted hayride attraction because one of the actors, a zombie who was supposed to be feasting on a mannequin, broke character and laughed when the man screamed. The customer's official complaint cited a breach of the spooky contract and immersion-breaking unprofessionalism from the undead employee. 41. Even the wholesome world of pumpkin carving contests isn't safe from bitter disputes and accusations of cheating. A woman filed a formal protest after coming in second place at her local community festival. The winner had used a power drill with various bits to create an intricate, lace-like pattern. The runner-up, who used traditional knives, claimed this was an unfair technological advantage, and that the use of power tools violated the traditional spirit of pumpkin carving. 42. We've all argued with friends about what constitutes a Christmas movie. Well, one viewer in Oklahoma took the Halloween movie debate to a whole new level. He filed a complaint with a local TV station for its 31 Nights of Halloween movie marathon. His issue? They included the film The Silence of the Lambs. He argued that as a psychological thriller, it lacked the supernatural or slasher elements necessary for a true Halloween film, and its inclusion was thematically inappropriate. 43. The war on Christmas is old news. Welcome to the intense one-day war on lingering Halloween. An HOA in North Carolina sent a violation notice to a family on the morning of November 1st. Their crime was that their skeleton decorations were still in the yard. The complaint, filed by a neighbor at 7 a.m., stated that the continued presence of macabre imagery was preventing the neighborhood from properly transitioning into the harvest-themed decor of the Thanksgiving season. 44. You'd think the main complaint about party food would be that it ran out. Not for this guest, whose concerns were far more clinical. An attendee at a corporate Halloween party filed an anonymous complaint with HR. The target was the Mad Scientist's buffet, specifically the hot dogs carved to look like severed fingers. The complaint stated that the lack of a visible fingernail on the hot dog fingers was anatomically lazy, and the imprecise presentation was more unsettling than the intended spookiness. 45. Most calls to animal welfare are about genuine neglect. This one was about a potential identity crisis among the local wildlife. A woman reported her neighbor for animal cruelty because he put a small lion's mane costume on his fluffy orange cat. Her complaint to the local Humane Society wasn't that the cat was uncomfortable, but that it was deceiving the local bird and squirrel population, which could upset the delicate balance of the backyard ecosystem by creating a pint-sized apex predator. 46. Here's a product review you don't see every day. 1 star, because the product worked exactly as advertised. A woman demanded a refund from a party supply store for a package of fake stretchy spider webs. Her complaint was that the material was deceptively realistic and excessively sticky. She claimed she spent over an hour trying to remove the webbing from her porch railings after the party, and that the product's effectiveness had caused her significant emotional and physical distress. 47. Public libraries are supposed to be quiet sanctuaries. But for one patron in Wisconsin, the horror section was a little too good at its job. He filed a complaint with the head librarian about the Halloween book display. His issue was that the cover of Stephen King's It, featuring Pennywise the Clown, was aggressively frightening and visible from the non-fiction aisle. He insisted the library should place a trigger warning sign next to the display to protect patrons from unexpected literary terror. 48. In the world of liability and insurance, even a Halloween costume can be seen as a major corporate risk. A man dressed as a very convincing construction worker stood near a closed-off roadwork site to take a picture. The site foreman filed an incident report with his company complaining that the man's unauthorized representation of a certified laborer was a significant safety and insurance liability. He was worried someone might ask the costumed man for directions or, even worse, assume he was a real employee. 49. Most people complain about Halloween decorations being too scary. One man in an upscale apartment complex in Boston had the opposite problem. He filed a complaint against the building management for their lobby decorations, which consisted of cheerful cartoon ghosts and smiling pumpkins. He argued that the infantile and overly whimsical decor was an insult to the rich Gothic history of the holiday and was incompatible with the building's sophisticated luxury branding. He unironically demanded more historically accurate and terrifying decorations. 50. Ever heard of a ghost breaking the law? A visitor to a haunted historic battlefield in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, sure thought he had. He filed a park ranger report, not about litter or vandalism, but about the behavior of a supposed apparition. He claimed he saw a ghostly soldier from the Civil War era smoking what looked like a modern, filter-tipped cigarette. He was outraged by the anachronistic behavior and complained that it completely shattered the historical authenticity of the paranormal experience. 51. The battle for the thermostat is a classic office struggle. But at one company, it escalated into a Halloween horror story. An employee who was dressed as a vampire filed a complaint with HR against a coworker for turning up the heat. He claimed that his costume, which included a heavy velvet cape, was becoming unbearably warm, and that the coworker's actions were costume-based discrimination. He insisted the office temperature should be accommodating to the thermally disadvantaged, like the undead. 52. You might think the worst thing a Halloween decoration could do is fall on someone. But in a quiet Oregon suburb, the crime was simply existing. A woman called the non-emergency police line to report a suspicious character loitering in her neighbor's yard for 3 consecutive days. The character was a scarecrow. When the officer explained what it was, she complained that its unblinking, vacant stare made her feel like she was being watched, and it was a form of passive intimidation. 56. When a group of teenagers created their own haunted garage for local kids, they probably expected compliments on their spooky creativity. What they got was a complaint from a parent, not about the scares, but about the science. One of the rooms featured a mad scientist mixing colorful liquids in beakers. The parent, a chemistry teacher, was appalled. She complained that the actors were demonstrating unsafe lab protocols and mixing incompatible chemicals, even if they were just colored water, setting a terrible example for the children. '59. In the age of online reviews, no one is safe, not even a haunted house. A man left a scathing one-star review for a local haunted attraction. His complaint wasn't about the actors, the props, or the price. It was about the plot. He wrote a 500-word critique of the haunted house's weak narrative structure and poor character development. He felt the jump scares were random and unearned, and that the story of the vengeful ghost lacked a compelling and emotionally resonant backstory. 60. Dressing up your dog is a beloved Halloween tradition. So, apparently, '61. Most people understand that a bowl of candy left on a porch with a "please take one" sign is an honor system. One woman in Georgia, however, saw it as a binding contract. When her child arrived to find an empty bowl, she called the non-emergency police line to report a mass theft of community property. She wanted officers to investigate which of the neighborhood kids had violated the one-piece limit, demanding justice for her child's candyless plight. 62. What's scarier than a skeleton decoration? According to one hyper-observant neighbor, it's an anatomically incorrect one. He filed a formal complaint with his HOA about a plastic skeleton hanging from a tree because it was missing the floating ribs. His letter stated that this glaring anatomical oversight was not only aesthetically displeasing but also spread dangerous misinformation about the human skeletal structure, and he demanded the owner add the missing bones for educational accuracy. 63. In the intensely competitive world of office potlucks and holiday parties, even pumpkin decorating is serious business. An employee filed an official grievance with HR after his department's carving contest. His complaint? The company only provided classic, round pumpkins. He argued this created an inherent bias that favored traditional jack-o'-lantern faces and unfairly disadvantaged artists like himself, who wish to carve panoramic landscapes that require a flatter, more oblong gourd canvas. 64. People go to haunted houses expecting to be scared, but one customer's biggest fear was apparently the fire code. He complained to management that the haunted house's emergency exit signs were distractingly bright. He argued that the prominent, glowing green signs completely ruined the dark, terrifying ambiance every time he turned a corner. He wasn't concerned about safety. He was filing a critique that the federally mandated escape route was a major artistic flaw in the production. 65. Apparently, the centuries-old schedule for Halloween is no longer convenient for modern families. A parent group submitted a formal petition to their city council to complain about the designated 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. trick-or-treating hours. They claimed this rigid time frame conflicted with dinner, bath, and optimal screen time schedules. They proposed a new system with multiple, flexible trick-or-treat windows, including a weekend daytime slot for younger children and a later one for teens. 66. Here is a uniquely 21st century problem where ancient folklore clashes with modern technology. A shopper in a big box store filed a complaint because the motion-activated cackling witch display near the entrance kept setting off the panic alarm on her car keys. Every time someone walked past, the witch would shriek, and her car in the parking lot would start honking. She demanded they move the witch or compensate her for the emotional toll of constant accidental car alarms. 67. One person's spooky decoration is another's unpermitted construction. A man called his city's code enforcement office to report his neighbor for building a bizarre and non-compliant new structure on his property. When the inspector arrived, he found the structure was a giant, elaborate spiderweb made of thick white rope stretching from the roof to the ground. The complainant genuinely thought his neighbor was building an illegal, web-shaped patio without a permit. 68. The party may be over, but the outrage is just beginning. On November 1st, a resident sent a furious email to his local sanitation department about the epidemic of pumpkin carcasses. He was disgusted by the sight of his neighbor's decaying, slumping jack-o'-lanterns left out by the curb. He referred to them as hazardous organic waste and demanded the city implement a separate, immediate post-Halloween gourd retrieval program to deal with the foul-smelling festive remains. 69. And for the grand finale of baffling complaints, a man dressed in a full Dracula costume tried to donate blood at a mobile blood drive on Halloween. When the nurses politely turned him away for obvious, comical reasons, he didn't laugh. He filed an official complaint with the organization for lifestyle discrimination. He argued that they were unfairly stereotyping him based on his attire and that his vampiric identity should not disqualify him from performing his civic duty. Turns out, the true spirit of Halloween isn't lurking in haunted houses, it's hiding in complaint forms. Now I need to know, what's the dumbest Halloween complaint you can imagine someone actually filing? Be creative. The comments are your courtroom. And if you made it this far without calling HR on a zombie, smash that like button and subscribe. Because we've only just scratched the surface of America's glorious absurdity.